US President Donald Trump has called his wife's new movie beautiful, emotional, fashionable and cinematic. But there is just one problem. No one is going to see it.
The film is called Melania. It cost around $60 million to make. It follows the First Lady over 20 days before the 2025 inauguration. And it opened in Australia today amid cancelled screenings, empty cinemas and just a handful of tickets sold.
My film is about to begin. Hello, America.
Here we go again.
This story was never told before.
Everyone wants to know. So here it is.
I will give a scoop out.
Together
With like-minded leaders,
we have a voice.
I led the production.
You can come in, come on in. My proudest legacy will be that of peacemaker.
Peacemaker in the fire.
And he loved it.
Okay, this is wild. According to the clip, Melania's $60 million documentary, Melania, just hit theaters, and the numbers are a collapse. Canceled screenings, empty seats, and theaters reportedly selling a single ticket. Then comes the desperate stunt. GOP clubs allegedly buying out showings to fake demand. The clip claims Amazon paid $40 million for rights and poured another $35 million into marketing, while Trump calls it beautiful and cinematic. Ad review bombing, a director facing past misconduct allegations, and crew members reportedly asking to go uncredited. This is power, chaos, and optics. So what are they trying to cover up? And who's left holding the bill?
She may have rung the bell at the New York Stock Exchange to herald the movie's arrival in theaters Friday, but before it's even hit screens, the film's been getting review bombed on movie site Letterboxd. Did I watch this? No. Do I need to? Also no, writes one commentator. If they showed this on a plane, people would still walk out, writes another. The timing couldn't be worse. On the very day ICE agents killed nurse Alex Pretty, the White House went ahead with its preview of Melania for special guests that night.
I've seen pieces of it. It's incredible, I tell you.
Melania's director is also controversial, Brett Ratner, banished by Hollywood after accusations of sexual misconduct in 2017. Then there's the flick's financial backing, Amazon shelling out $40 million US for worldwide rights and spending another $35 million.
It's beautiful, it's emotional, it's fashionable, it's cinematic, and I'm very proud of it. Okay, stop right there, because that line tells you everything about what's happening here. This isn't really a film rollout, it's an optics operation. And I'm going to translate what that means in plain English, using only what's in the transcript you just saw. Here's what the clip says happened. A movie called Melania opened with a big, glossy premise, a behind-the-scenes look at the First Lady over the 20 days leading up to the 2025 inauguration, told from her perspective. The transcript frames it as a roughly $60 million production. It also describes screenings in Australia with cancellations, empty cinemas, and very low ticket sales. Then the story widens. The transcript claims ticket sales in the US are weak, and the UK is even worse, to the point where, in the clip's telling, some screenings sold a single ticket. It describes screenshots of mostly empty seating charts spreading online. It describes the movie getting slammed and mocked, including commentary on Letterboxd. It describes the overall vibe as public interest is close to non-existent. Now, if this were just a celebrity vanity project that flopped, you could shrug and move on. But the transcript is not presenting it as a normal flop. It's presenting it as a political machine trying to manufacture the appearance of demand. And that's the real point. Because the claim being made here is that Republican-affiliated clubs in multiple areas started buying large blocks of tickets, sometimes whole screenings, to make the theaters look less empty. The clip describes those tickets then being given away or discounted through affiliated channels. It also describes some locations requiring personal information to reserve a seat, which the narration suggests turns people off even more. So the conflict isn't, is Melania a good filmmaker? The conflict is, when the brand can't earn attention, do they just buy the room and call it popularity? That's the moment we're living in. The line between public enthusiasm and rented applause keeps getting blurred. And it's not just happening in politics, it's happening in culture too. Let's take this piece by piece, because the transcript is doing two things at once. On one track, it's describing a movie that's struggling to pull in regular audiences. It uses phrases like canceled screenings, empty cinemas, handful of tickets sold, barely sell, offered for free, and still seats aren't filling. Whether every detail is perfectly measured isn't something we can verify from the transcript alone, but the narrative being laid out is consistent. The project isn't catching fire in a real, organic way. On the second track, the transcript claims there's an entire ecosystem stepping in to keep the image alive, not to make the movie succeed as art, but to keep the Trump world brand from taking another public embarrassment. And if you're wondering why that matters, here's why. Authoritarian politics thrives on spectacle. It doesn't need you to truly love it. It needs you to believe everyone else loves it. It needs the appearance of inevitability. It needs the crowd shot. That's not a movies are bad story. That's a power story. Now the clip includes moments from Melania herself. There's a segment where she's shown hyping the film and describing her life as incredibly busy, saying she wants to show what it takes to go from private citizen to first lady again, calling the film beautiful, emotional, fashionable, cinematic, and saying she's proud. Then the transcript says she posted on X after a White House screening on January 25th, calling it an historic moment, describing an inspiring room of friends, family, and cultural iconoclasts, and then giving that kind of lofty statement about personal stories enduring time and mutual obligations. Whatever you think of that language, it's clearly meant to elevate the project. It's trying to frame the film as legacy, not content. It's trying to put it in the historic bucket. And that matters because the transcript contrasts that lofty messaging with the alleged reality on the ground. Empty seats, weak sales, free tickets, and a scramble to prevent the visuals from looking humiliating. Here's the tell. When a product is thriving, it doesn't need loyalty enforcement. And that's one of the most unsettling details in the transcript. Not the sales numbers, but the implication that attendance becomes a kind of political gesture. The clip describes it as feeling like movie night mixed with a loyalty check. That phrasing is doing a lot of work because it maps directly onto the broader Trump-era pattern: performance over substance, signaling over results. In normal life, you buy tickets because you want to see something. In the world this transcript describes, you buy tickets because the brand can't be seen failing. Now, the transcript also talks about how the movie was promoted and who was involved. It says Melania rang the bell at the New York Stock Exchange to herald the film's arrival. It describes a White House preview for special guests. It references Donald Trump boosting the documentary and telling followers tickets were selling out fast, while screenshots suggested otherwise. Even if you strip out the snark, that's a familiar technique. Say sold out, show packed, declare historic, and count on the audience not checking. This is narrative flooding. Overwhelm the space with confident claims, so the debate becomes which vibe wins instead of what's true. And the transcript adds something else: timing. It claims that on the day ICE agents killed a nurse named Alex Prey, the White House proceeded with its preview event that night. That's a serious allegation in the clip, and we're not given primary documentation here. But the reason it's included is clear. The narration is highlighting contrast. A country dealing with real-life harm and enforcement power, while the administration is staging a glamorous screening. Whether every detail in that anecdote is fully established is beyond what we can prove from this transcript alone. But the rhetorical function is unmistakable. It paints a picture of priorities. Now, let's talk about the alleged financial backing, because the transcript brings in corporate muscle. It says Amazon paid $40 million for worldwide rights and spent another $35 million on marketing. It says that despite global marketing, some UK screenings sold almost nothing. It then suggests this kind of spending can be worth it if it buys access, and it mentions Jeff Bezos attending the screening, with the narrator implying quid pro quo style influence. We are not shown contracts, internal emails, or any official statements here, but the clip is making a broader argument. In a system where power is concentrated, cultural projects can turn into transactional currency.
It's not easy to produce. It's not easy task. My life, it's incredible busy. A lot of is going on. I want to show the people what it takes to go from private citizen to being a first lady again. It's beautiful, it's emotional, it's fashionable, it's cinematic, and I'm very...
You spend enormous money not because the public wants the thing, but because being close to the regime has benefits. That's not Hollywood gossip. That's governance corruption in cultural clothing. And now we get to a section that's important to handle carefully: the director and behind-the-scenes claims. The transcript identifies the director as Brett Ratner and says he was banished by Hollywood after accusations of sexual misconduct in 2017. It also says he denied the accusations and was never charged. That's a crucial detail, and it's right there in the transcript. Accusation is not conviction. Then the clip goes further, alleging he appears in Epstein files and describes photos and implications. That is an explosive claim, but it is not substantiated inside the transcript with documents or verifiable sourcing. So the only responsible way to refer to it is as an allegation made by the narrator, not as a fact. And stepping back, the more grounded point the transcript is trying to make doesn't require the wildest allegation anyway. The point is, they chose a controversial figure for a high-profile project, and that choice itself becomes part of the story. Even the transcript's safer, stated elements, previous accusations, industry exile, denial, no charges, already establish controversy. You don't need to turn it into a bonfire of unverified claims to see why that choice would raise eyebrows. Now, another detail in the transcript is genuinely striking: crew members not wanting their names attached. The clip claims that a significant share of the crew asked not to be credited, with one estimate saying roughly 2/3 of a New York team requested their names be removed. Again, we don't see the crew list or the credit negotiations. We're hearing a report in the clip. But as a concept, that's unusual enough that it lands. People in the film business usually want their work credited, even on messy projects, because credits are career currency. So if the transcript's depiction is accurate, it suggests something: reputational risk. Not, this was hard work, not, the hours were long, but I don't want this attached to me. That is the kind of detail that makes this bigger than a box office story, because it implies the project is seen as politically radioactive, not artistically daring. Now zoom out for a second. What do you notice about the whole narrative arc presented here? It's not actually about Melania as an artist. It's about Melania as a brand asset. The film is framed as a vehicle for myth-making, for access, for loyalty signaling, for controlling a story. And that is the through line we have to name plainly. This is what narrative control looks like when a political movement can't tolerate looking unpopular. In normal politics, you take feedback. In strongman politics, you falsify the crowd. And the transcript is essentially describing a culture version of that same pattern. If the seats are empty, don't ask why, just buy them. Now I want to be careful with one more piece of the transcript. It includes a lot of loaded commentary, including crude insults and broad accusations about groups of attendees. You can feel the speaker trying to sharpen it into a late-night monologue. But we don't need that to understand the civic risk here. The civic risk is simpler and scarier. When a movement invests more energy in appearances than accountability, it becomes allergic to reality. And that allergy spills everywhere: elections, courts, oversight, public health, immigration, economic governance. Not because those things are identical to a movie premiere, but because the same habit of mind keeps showing up. If the truth is inconvenient, replace it with a performance. That's why this matters. Now, let's go back to the Republican club's angle, because it's the hinge of the story. The transcript says insiders describe blocks of tickets being purchased and distributed through GOP-affiliated channels, sometimes with personal information required to reserve. It also says empty theaters look terrible and that this isn't organic demand. That phrase, not organic, is doing the work of a diagnosis. The clip is claiming demand is being simulated. And if you've watched American politics over the last decade, you've seen this playbook in a dozen forms. Not people are excited, but we'll stage excitement. Not we won credibility, but we'll claim credibility. Not we have answers, but we'll punish the question. Here it shows up as movie tickets. In other places it shows up as crowd size obsession, scripted applause, weaponized grievance, and constant declarations of victory before the votes are counted. And again, I'm not adding outside facts. I'm talking about the pattern the transcript invites you to recognize. Because if the only thing you need is the appearance of support, then you don't actually need support. You just need compliance. And that is where democratic culture gets squeezed. When compliance becomes the goal, persuasion is optional. Now, the transcript also describes a premiere-like event at the Kennedy Center in DC, saying it felt less like a normal screening and more like a curated power gathering. It says the guest list included Trump, Melania, conservative celebrities, billionaires, CEOs, and that regular press was largely kept out, with only friendly outlets getting in. We're not shown credentials lists, press passes, or official press policies, but again, the story being told is coherent. Selective access, controlled optics, the appearance of prestige without the mess of public scrutiny. That's not a neutral detail. In an open society, you don't fear open viewing. You don't fear reporters. You don't fear critics. You let the work stand and you accept the reviews. But the transcript suggests the opposite. The work is less important than the message the event is meant to send. Now ask yourself, what message would that be? It's a message to insiders. We are still the center of gravity. It's a message to donors and corporate power. We reward proximity. It's a message to the base. Show up, even if you don't care, because loyalty is the point. And it's a message to everyone else. Don't laugh at us. We can still rent the room. That's the machinery. That's the mechanism. Now let's move into the pressure phase, because the transcript itself moves there. It connects the film to the larger environment of Trump-era governance, including immigration enforcement, political influence, billionaire access, and the blending of state power with brand management. You don't have to believe every aside in the narration to see the underlying concern. The underlying concern is, this is what happens when a political identity becomes a consumer product. A consumer product cannot admit failure. A consumer product cannot accept rejection. A consumer product must keep selling the fantasy. So when reality breaks through, empty seats, weak sales, public ridicule, the instinct isn't humility, it's manipulation. And manipulation becomes muscle memory. Now here's the part people miss. The point is not whether this documentary deserves an audience. The point is whether a political ecosystem is comfortable manufacturing an audience when it doesn't exist. Because if you normalize that in culture, it becomes easier to normalize it in power. And the transcript gives you a phrase that really sticks: political theater. It's describing a premiere as theater, not screening. It's describing marketing as a spectacle, not outreach. And that phrase is a warning label. Political theater is not automatically bad. Every movement has messaging. But when the theater replaces reality, people get hurt. Institutions get hollowed out. Trust collapses. People stop believing what they see, and then whoever has the loudest megaphone can sell any version of events. That's how disinformation wins. Now, I want to take a moment to ground the claims we can treat as directly stated in the transcript, without stretching. The transcript explicitly states, the film is called Melania and is framed as following the First Lady over 20 days before the 2025 inauguration.
I was told by people who worked on the film that a significant share of the crew members did not want their name attached. One person estimates that roughly 2/3 of the New York team asked not to be credited on the film. Another person I spoke with who will be credited on the film said that after Trump's first year in office, they now wish they hadn't put their names on it. The president has been boosting the documentary this week, telling followers that tickets were selling out fast, but screenshots of empty or near empty theater seating charts have spread across social media, indicating people might not be so interested in paying money to see the First Lady on the big screen.
Donald Trump is presented as praising it as beautiful, emotional, fashionable, and cinematic. The narration claims the film cost around $60 million. The clip describes low ticket sales, empty cinemas, and canceled screenings in Australia on opening. It describes review mockery and review bombing on Letterboxd, with commenters making jokes about walking out. It describes a White House screening and a statement posted by Melania on X calling it an historic moment. It names Brett Ratner as director and notes accusations of sexual misconduct in 2017, his denial, and that he was never charged. It claims Amazon paid for worldwide rights and spent heavily on marketing. It claims there were reports of crew members not wanting to be credited. Everything else, insiders say, screenshots spreading, GOP clubs buying out seats, it felt like a loyalty test. Bezos got favors, and especially the most inflammatory allegations, are being presented as claims within the narration, not things we can independently prove from the transcript itself. That distinction isn't pedantry. That distinction is the rule of law mindset. It's the difference between evidence and vibes. And pro-democracy politics has to live in that difference, even when it's tempting to go for the cheap hit. Now, what are the stakes for regular people? Because it's easy to hear documentary flop and think this is just celebrity nonsense. But look at what the transcript is really describing: a political culture that is training people to treat reality as optional. When that attitude spreads, you get policy built on fantasy. You get oversight treated like an enemy. You get civic institutions reduced to props. You get money replacing legitimacy. And that shows up in your life as weaker accountability when power abuses happen, more corruption tolerated because the brand demands it, less transparency because criticism is seen as sabotage, and a public that's exhausted, cynical, and ready to disengage. That disengagement is the prize, because when people check out, the loudest faction gets to steer the ship. That's the danger. And in the transcript, you can actually see that dynamic in miniature. The narration describes people offering free tickets and still not filling seats. That's a kind of silent public verdict. Not a protest, not a boycott, just indifference. Indifference is devastating to propaganda. Propaganda needs attention. It needs an audience. It needs you to care enough to either love it or hate it. So if the audience won't show up, the machine tries to drag the audience in, or at least buy cardboard cutouts of them and call it a crowd. That is the moment. That is the tell. Now we arrive at the line-crossed moment in the story, the alleged shift from promotion to manipulation. If the transcript's reporting is accurate, then buying out theaters to make the room look full is not marketing. It's misrepresentation. It's a fabricated signal. And fabricated signals are how corruption hides in plain sight. Because once you train your movement to accept fake signals in harmless settings, like movie attendance, you've also trained them to accept fake signals in serious settings: oversight hearings, election narratives, court outcomes, policy impacts. It becomes don't ask, don't verify, don't embarrass the team. That is contempt for institutions, not always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, polite, and packaged as loyalty, and it's poison. So here's where I land this, calmly and clearly. If a documentary can't earn an audience, it should fail on its own merits and be forgotten. That's normal. That's life. What isn't normal is a political ecosystem that treats failure as unacceptable and tries to purchase the illusion of public love. That's not culture. That's control. Democracy doesn't require you to like a movie. Democracy requires you to respect reality, even when it humiliates your side. Because once a movement decides reality is optional, it will eventually decide rights are optional too. That's the consequence. And that's why this weird little story about empty theaters matters.